A trade, a guy out due to roster management reasons, and your starter being the backup on the night. Yeah, that's the kind of result that you would probably expect.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, March 6th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, the host of the show, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. And joining me on today's edition of the show is Nich Fairbanks for another edition of Fairbanks Friday. You can follow him on X at Prudential0. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers as the Panthers lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets by a final score of 4-2 in the third game of their 4-game road trip. And now it's 4 games in a row, that the Panthers have lost coming out of the Olympic break, now at 1-4, and their 9-game winning streak against the Blue Jackets is over, dating back to the 2022 season. And as we mentioned earlier, Panthers made the trade for Jeff Petry, sending him to the Minnesota Wild. AJ Greer was out due to roster management reasons, and for the first time all season, Daniil Tarasov started the front end of a back-to-back, while Sergei Bobrovsky we don't know if he'll start the second end or if he'll get traded right before the deadline. But the Panthers end up with a better jump in this one, but unable to bury their chances, while Columbus did. And the Panthers provided a little bit of a comeback, and we thought it was going to be tied, but they end up falling short. And Nich, it's not necessarily that this feels deflating now at this point where we are with 20 games left, but you were just waiting when it was 1-0 for it to just be okay. Let's just wait for the other goal to score, and it's like, okay, the Panthers again. It's another one of those games where it's controlling play, lack of second chance opportunities, and passes that were broken up from the flank to the center, and the Panthers, and then it's a quick transition opportunity the other way. And that's my takeaway on the night. And I can't say that I'm surprised at this result with the Panthers dropping 4-2 against Columbus.
Yeah, I think this is probably the least deflated I've felt in a defeat this season. You can say what you will about the goalie interferences that have happened the last couple of games. I just think one team wants it more, and the other team knew kind of where they're at, and I think they understand that, hey, we need to get this season done. We need to get healthy. We need to get back to where we need to be. And you could just see it, probably in the first and second period. It's just, I don't know. It just seemed a lot of like blah. But Maurice is still fighting. He got fired up on the bench during a missed penalty call. I think Lundell is still trying to fight guys or drag them outside of where Tarasov was. So there's still some things there, but I don't think we're going to be seeing the best Florida Panthers here in the final 20 games. And depending on what happens during the trade deadline, we may be seeing a little bit worse than we did probably tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, with Anton Lundell going after Adam Fantilli after a hit on Gustav Forsling towards the end of the second period. Eric Branson with a little bit of a hip check that Mackey took exception to after the puck was way away, got him on a cross check, and then Eric Branson slashing him on the leg. Thankfully, that Mackey Samoskevich ended up being okay after that. But with, again, going back to what happened in this game, where it was a lack of second chance opportunities, where you see on the first goal by Columbus, Ivan Proverov from the point, and then it goes off Dmitry Kulikov and into the net. Bodies in front and with a lot of traffic. Okay, you're getting one through, and then unfortunately, the Panthers weren't able to continue to convert, although they were getting, at least in their favor, the shot attempts. I mean, after the second period, it was 50 shot attempts, 51 to be exact. But at the end of the game, at 5-on-5, it was exactly 20-20 between the two, and I'm like, yikes! And then multiple goals that were scored due to defensive zone turnovers, a player knocking into the referee in the corner, and just pinning themselves and just hesitant with holding on to the puck too long. And then you think that you're separating the puck and on a hit, and then the Columbus Blue Jackets are there to crash the net, and multiple redirection goals there for Columbus, with Olivier on the second one, and then later on with Boone Jenner later on crashing the net. So they got to the dirty areas. Columbus did. Florida, it was a really difficult time that they found getting to those dirty areas. So that to me was a big difference.
Yeah, it definitely was. And unfortunately, we've seen this since the All-Star break. The Panthers just don't look in sync. I mean, they'll control, periods of play or dominate certain times during the period, but they just can't put together a 50 or 60-minute game right now. They're making errors that they wouldn't usually make. As you said, they're holding onto the puck too long, and that is either an indecision that they're thinking too much about it, or literally nobody's open. So they're not making the simple play, maybe just dumping it and getting it down the ice to get changes, or, just to take the pressure off. You can think about Brad Marchand always taking a dip and turning towards the blue line and getting stripped. Those kind of turnovers can kill you, because the transition with the NHL teams now is just ridiculous, how fast these guys are and how well skated they are. And then you have the defense. I can't expect more out of Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad right now. I'm glad that Mikkola and Kulikov are still playing, but that third pairing right now,
hard to watch.
It is. You can tell that there's inexperience, probably overthinking, and again, just turning the puck over. Even Uvis was not. He can't escape criticism tonight, because there was, I think, on the Jenner goal, he's just sitting there watching the puck as it gets past him and goes right to Jenner for the goal. So hopefully, Zito sees this, and he either is able to make something happen, either whether that's going to be trade deadline or it's something that they address during the offseason, because they definitely do have top four already. They just need to be healthy. And they have Kulikov, but who's going to be in that sixth spot that will really complement them and actually make them a solid six again?
No doubt. And I'm just thinking, I know they scored on the power play with the extra attacker just coming on, which Sam Bennett 4 goals in his last 4 games now. But the one power play where I was just a little frustrated, although they did get a whole bunch of zone time, is the one in just after the 2-0 goal where Aaron Ekblad has an opportunity to stop it at the blue line after a clear, and then it goes by. You have to reset, and then a clear up the ice. Tarasov gets the stick, doesn't get the stick all the way down, and and a scary moment almost going in. And but thankfully that puck went wide, and you're just thinking, man, it's just those comedy of errors here that even though it didn't bite them, you're just putting your hands on your head and thinking, oh my goodness, how much more of this and how much more anxiety is this team going to bring the fans and everybody who watches this team throughout the rest of this season. So that's just the other part of this. And even when the Panthers did get to the middle, like you mentioned, Brad Marchand of the cutting of the inside, if there was a player that was of the Columbus Blue Jackets that was near the crease, it would land on the defenseman's body instead of Jet Greaves. It wasn't making that extra move necessary in order to get to that shooting lane and to at least go over the shoulder of Jet Greaves. So that's another thing that I saw when it came to off puck when it came to those return feeds after getting the puck to the flank in the neutral zone and then getting it back once they did gain the zone.
Yeah, Columbus did a really good job in clogging up the zone, or at least the slot area. I think Reinhart maybe only had one or two chances, and don't think he even hit the net or even hit Graves. But one thing I will say is Columbus has looked like a much different team since firing their previous coach, Dean Evanson. And to bring in the guy that they brought in, who I think he retired, actually. I think he retired
Rick Bowness.
because, yeah, Rick Bowness. I think he retired because of either health issues or he wanted to take care of his significant other, his wife. But apparently he's really been able to get the most out of this team. And, I think he's 12-0-1 or 13-0-1 now. Columbus is doing everything they can to put the heat on the Boston Bruins right now and get it into a final playoff spot. So it'll be exciting to see what happens to them down the stretch. They had a wonderful season, although it was tragedy-stricken last year. But, they're showing that they're still a hard-nosed grinder team, blue-collar working. And, you would love to see a team like that get in and see what they could do just because, look what happened. Look what they did to the Tampa Bay a few years ago. I mean, Tampa Bay was a heavy favorite and they end up sweeping them. So I wouldn't count this team out at all. Florida just didn't have enough, and I just don't think they have. I don't think they have the will right now. And that scary save or that scary pass or the clear that went to Tarasov, he would have joined Patrick Waugh and Martin Brodeur for doing something like that. So, maybe it's something that the greats all do, and Tarasov would have gotten it over with at a young age.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of the easiest guys to root for in the NHL was Sean Monahan, best friends with Johnny Gaudreau, did have a shorthanded rush on that power play that I spoke about earlier. So one of those guys that you hope that gets a whole bunch of success there. It's funny because speaking of Monahan, a little bit of a brouhaha kind of happened between Sebrengo and Gabranson after it was Balinskis that went to the box for that hooking call. That was Sean Monahan winning that same board battle. But credit to Columbus for converting when they had to. And now Florida just continues to sink a lot more, as now they are 7th best lottery odds as Nashville is currently winning last time we checked against Boston 5-2 with 10 minutes left in the third. So Columbus will actually be 1 point behind the Boston Bruins as well. So multiple swings in this playoff race here. So interesting, just makes it a little bit more interesting. But we're going to transition to segment number 2. We're going to give our 3 duds of the game and then discuss the moment when we knew the game was lost. We'll discuss that more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. And cold days, packed schedules, and big goals. That's winter. And when there's not a lot of time to cook, eating well can feel like another thing on the to-do list. That's where Factor comes in. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the planning, prepping, or cooking. And Factor meals are always fresh, never frozen, and ready in just about 2 minutes. The ingredients stand out: lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. No refined seed oils, artificial sweeteners, and no refined sugars. Perfect way for busy weeks when you still want to eat the meals that support your goals without the stress. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. And eat like a pro with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan. 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. Also, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And college basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into a bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. And you could build a college parlay if you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits you. And you can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate fitting. You can apply the profit boost instantly to bump up the potential payout. Be safe, be bold with your team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, but with more upside to it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Segment 2 here on this Friday, March 6th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday, a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So the Florida Panthers lose, which means that we are going to be discussing our 3 duds of the game and then the moment when we knew the game was lost. And I'm going to go first with our duds. I'm going to go with the Sebrango-Balinskis pair, as we discussed earlier. Balinskis standing around. The physicality for Donovan Sebrango, not separating the puck enough prior to the Jenner goal. And the fact that when you look at these two, as far as on ice, Corsi under 45%, and then as far as the shots for, under 20 for both of them as far as the shot share percentage. And to think that the Panthers had the puck in the offensive zone the majority of the time, but those two, when they're on the ice, again, you see the inexperience there for that group. Yeah. Number 2 dud, gonna go with Mackie Samoskevich. A good amount of opportunities that he had, but just a lot of misconnection there, and just a lot of we spoke about hesitancy with pucks on their sticks a little too much. I felt like for Mackie specifically, he was a little too quick whenever he was getting fed. There was one specific Matthew Tkachuk feed that he shot right into the leg and didn't even get it on net. I thought originally it went on off of Jet Grease, but we saw the replay. It was right off of a leg there. So Mackie Samoskevich is number 2. Number 1 is Carter Verhaeghe. He was the guy that I mentioned earlier. 2 defensive zone turnovers that created the goals. The first one, and then the one where he bumped into the referee right before the opportunity where Uvis Balinskis and Sebrango were on the ice for that third goal. So Carter Verhaeghe, first stud of the game. How about you?
Well, my third dud, wow. My third dud of the game is Jeff Petry. Hold on. He's not here anymore to try and anchor that third pairing. I am going to have to go with the third pairing as well. I think you pretty much said enough. Their Corsi's terrible. Their shots for is terrible. Just nothing being generated and a whole lot of nothing, unfortunately. My second dud, it's going to be Evan Rodrigues. He's stepped up all season, but over the last couple of games, I've not seen a ton from him. I feel like he's trying to draw penalties, or he's doing things that put the team into, I guess, a worse position. I don't feel like he's playing responsibly anymore, and he didn't really show up tonight. And my first dud, I don't know. It's very hard to pick out guys right now, but, I'll have to pick Carter Verhaeghe as well. He's not been doing what he's supposed to do, which is scoring or putting the puck in the back of the net. He had a great chance that went off the corner of the post that definitely beat Graves. But if he's not scoring, unfortunately, I think we're seeing that he is a big liability, not only defensively, but he can't win board battles. I never expect him to win a board battle. And then secondly, I don't think he creates room for anybody anymore. Everybody knows he's going to shoot, and his windup's very slow. So, again, if he's not putting the puck in the net, Verhaeghe, we got to figure it out, man.
Yeah. Oh, and Evan Rodrigues was shifted back to the wing for the first time in a while, where Luosterainen was placed at center. So I think it's unlikely that Evan Rodrigues does get traded. I do think he's valuable. because he has a year left on his deal. So that might be an experiment for the coaching staff as far as what to do for the rest of the season. So maybe that's just me guessing and spitballing out there. But also, that penalty that Evan Rodriguez took on the trip, Adam Fantilli made him look silly. Brought it to his forehand and then bringing it to his backhand as he was skating towards the goal line, and then boom, got hit the stick under his skates there. And then I personally don't understand the complaining there for Evan Rodriguez. I think he got him real good there. I think Adam Fantilli just showed him off there. But when we knew the game was lost, it's funny because I didn't really think this until I saw a replay because I didn't get a good look at it in live time. But when Carter Verhaeghe, he snuck a shot through the shoulder of Jet Greaves, and then it went off the crossbar.
Yep.
And then the Columbus Blue Jackets after that, they made it 2-0. And it was just we were waiting for, and again, like we mentioned at the very beginning of the show, we were just waiting for it to be 2-0 because we just didn't have that feeling that they were going to tie the game and it was going to be the same script. So, and that's before the midway point of the actual hockey game with 30 minutes left. And the Panthers, the scoreboard at least said 3-3 before the goal was taken off. But the fact that it was 30 minutes before, even me to myself, I'm telling myself, yikes.
Yeah, so I'll say this as far as like when I thought the game was lost. I think it's when I texted you at around, I think it's like the first period or second period. Just there's not a lot of going on. There's just no will. You could definitely see it with the guys. Just they're doing the bare minimum right now, and I'm not saying that they're mailing it in 100%, but you can just tell it's just not the same. The energy is not there. Although I was excited that they did come back and they were starting to ruin this tank. I knew that goal was coming off. Graves, I don't know what the hell he was doing, but I don't think Boqvist was given a chance to get out, but he put himself in that position and was not allowing Graves to get back into position. But he was out there swimming, man. Like, I think they were both wrong, but I guess tie goes to the goaltender. I guess that's what we're going to have to go with going forward because who knows what that interference call is anymore.
Yeah, and I'm looking back at our text messages, and I'll say it for the audio. I'll read it out loud to the audience and at what time it was. 8:35 Eastern Standard Time. Earlier the better tonight, and all I replied was, with how this is going, ... send. Didn't add on to that. So
that's before the end of the first period.
Yeah. So that's how bad it was as far as the energy that we felt in this one. And yeah, the fact that this happened twice in the last 6 days for the Panthers, the Malenstein one where Samuelson was out of the crease, but still hit the glove. But there's that saying, if you're in the blue, it's on you. But there has to be some gray area where you attempt to get out. And then I believe it was Ivan Proverov who basically wrapped him, bear hugged him. And then Jet Greaves was out of the crease where, what a rocket of a slap shot of a one-timer from Gustav Forsling there. And that's kind of where, in a way, even though the Panthers did cut no points out of it, that in a way is just like, okay, I could appreciate the fact that the Panthers, they're still fighting. They're still trying to win hockey games because, again, for each other and still trying to fight it out. That I could at least be pleased with. But again, we just don't know how they're going to roll things anymore. And I was thinking there's a point where I was thinking, man, they're going to complete this comeback, right? But not so much. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just in case anybody wanted to know what our pregame chat is usually about, getting prepared for doing the show. That was it tonight. it's just kind of devastating because Panthers for the last couple of years were getting a lot of calls their way for goaltender interference. I'm not gonna, back down from that. There's a
Yeah.
few of them that were, I don't know, but I was glad it went their way. So now when things are, minutes to midnight where their season's about to end, it kind of is what it is. So I still think the Buffalo one was more, to me, egregious due to the fact of what was on the line. And, if you touch a goalie's glove when he's going to make a save and he can't raise it all the way or he can't get it into position, to me, it's a no-brainer. And as Tarasov said, I don't know what they were smoking.
Yeah. I was more angry about that than this one for sure because the skate was in the blue. So that's hard to argue there. But let's transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss the details of the Jeff Petry trade to Minnesota, and also the fact that that the Panthers managed their roster as far as how they did. Is it an actual goodbye? And we'll discuss what our favorite memories of certain guys are if they are in fact traded. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, and inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In a minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Third and final segment here on this Friday, March 6th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, Panthers made one move as far as selling, and it was to trade Jeff Petry to the Minnesota Wild for a conditional 7th round pick. And the conditions on that 7th round pick are if the Minnesota Wild advance not 1, but 2 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Jeff Petry plays 50% of the Wild's games during that stretch, the pick will transfer from a 7th round pick to a 5th round pick. Significant as far as what the Panthers could possibly do as far as trading, possibly around the draft/free agency. But this is the Brad Marchand conditions all over again, except lower in the draft. But I will say, I'm glad that the front office at least did right by an older veteran who came here to win a cup in the first place, seeing that they were back-to-back. And Minnesota Wild, their window is just opening. I'm very excited about what they are going to do, although they have probably the toughest road. If they can figure out their 5-on-5 play, they'll be in great shape. But man, I'm not counting on that condition to satisfy and become a fit. I'm not going to lie with who they are possibly going to face.
No, he was brought in for depth in case maybe a defenseman has a really bad game. It gives Minnesota another guy that they can plug in, a veteran that, hopefully they can trust and just will settle that team down. Panthers would hope it turns around to a 5th, but, it's a draft pick. They were lucky that they got a pick for him. Anybody who's, thinking that they're going to get more than what they got, it wasn't going to happen. And as far as Minnesota being here, living here, and actually going to see them live play, as you said, they have to figure out their 5-on-5 play because they can score on the power play. And then if they're shorthanded, watch out for Matt Boldy because that guy can put the puck in the back of the net like the best of them shorthanded.
Yeah.
but I will say this about Minnesota. They're soft. I don't think that they have the physicalness or the physicality that is needed to get them through round 1 or 2, because those are the rounds that you really beat yourself up. And, you have Hughes, who still doesn't have a contract. So you think he's got to play for one. We don't know if he's going to sign back in Minnesota. But you have to be encouraged by what Kaprizov has been able to do after signing his deal. He looks like worth every penny right now. And they have a really good decor. So you have a lot of good things going. Plus, they have the trade chip that they have in Wallstead, too. So they could get even better. Maybe bring in, a power forward or an actual physical defenseman, which to me would be the world of difference for them, making an impact.
Mm-hmm. And Minnesota's only won one playoff series since 2003, and that was in 2015. So a little bit of a drought right now for the Wild there. So a lot of teams are going through droughts. Buffalo, Detroit, even though they're going to break them. Los Angeles hasn't won a playoff series since they won the Cup in 2014. So a lot of droughts that could possibly be broken this year. And the gauntlet that they have to go through in Colorado, who just traded for Cole Smith. The Stars just traded for Michael Bunting today. Tyler Myers the other day. So they're loading up. That's what the contenders do. It's crazy because we were just discussing this before recording. All the Pacific Division teams, none of them would be in the playoffs in the East. But the Panthers, if they're in the Western Conference, they'd be 4 points out. So our perspective is just so different because you also look at the lottery odds. If you're in the playoff bubble and your draft pick goes from 15th, you go into 16th and above because Ottawa's first round pick is forfeited. But if you're outside the playoff bubble, you jump 5 spots in the draft. It's quite funny looking at that. Man,
it just tells you how hard it is to play in the Atlantic Division, how good it's been. It took this season, it took the Panthers to be completely injured. Well, I shouldn't say completely injured, but badly injured, for not only Buffalo to take a step up, but they had to fire their GM to actually, have some accountability. But you have Detroit that now is kind of coming to fruition with all the draft picks and the long time growing their own. They actually just traded for David Perron, so he's back in Detroit. He was a big piece of their last couple of seasons, scored some big goals, but also was a physical type guy. So something that I think they need to protect Larkin and some of their younger players. But the Atlantic Division is the hardest in the NHL. And for the Panthers to, I'm not going to say win the division, but the fact that they were able to be the top team, one of the top teams, and win the Cup and go through those teams, there's no question, I guess, at the end of the day, who the better team was at the end of the year. Like they deserved it.
And especially last year where you were in the top 3, but none of your playoff series, you had home ice advantage. And you still had the most amount of time leading in a Stanley Cup final ever. Like,
you're going to trigger the Oilers fans. Don't say that.
don't care. But yeah. And I mean, just goes to show how tough. Look at the Panthers winning percentage against the Atlantic. 417, Metropolitan Division, right at 500. Western Conference, 577. A world of difference between the two. I'm not gonna list off every team, obviously, but I can only imagine what the rest of the other teams in the Atlantic look like against the Western Conference. But Nick, we are I'm trying to do math in my head here. 16 hours as of this recording from the trade deadline, and we saw one move made. We hardly knew Jeff Petry, obviously,
Yep.
but we did know Sergei Bobrovsky for almost 7 full seasons and AJ Greer for almost 2. Nothing's
Mhm.
official yet, but it feels like it's getting to that direction as both of them are about to be unrestricted free agents this summer, and the Panthers are in the position that they're in. So if they are traded, I wish them the best, and some of the best. I want to just discuss some of the best memories that we've had of AJ Greer, even though winning a Stanley Cup, still having a chip on his shoulder based on battling and even going into training camp saying you still got to fight for your spots. Admirable. And then even opening night, coming off of the 24 Stanley Cup, where he's getting into a fight in the first game of the season, and then continuing to battle and embracing the Battle of Florida, especially this past preseason. That is one thing I'm gonna miss about AJ Greer if he's in fact traded. And then Sergei Bobrovsky, I think of 55 of 55 at even strength against the Carolina Hurricanes in game 1. The bobbery, the double save on Gage Gonzalez in round 1 last year. And then just the fact that he went through the injury that he did in 2023, lost his starting position temporarily, came back and nobody ever threatened to take it away from him. So that's what I'm going to miss about Sergei Bobrovsky. And we'll see what happens come 16 hours from now. So what are you going to miss about these two guys if they are in fact traded?
Yeah. So I'll start with AJ Greer. I think the fact that he was able to come in and make such an impression on the team, because the first game he played was the first banner raising, and he got into a fight against I'm not sure who it was on Boston, but he had big shoes to fill. He was
Mhm.
brought in to take over or take the place of Ryan Lomberg from the season before, and fan favorite. Everybody loves the energy and what he was able to bring. AJ brought a different dimension. He was still tough. He was willing to be physical and fight for the team, but also he had a little bit of scoring finesse, and we've been able to see that this season. So, thank you for providing that extra dimension that the team needed to repeat. And also, just being one of those guys that the team could depend on as far as, being backed up and being physical. As far as Bob goes, first thing I'm going to say is thank you for signing in Florida. It was a huge need, especially with Luongo retiring
And the hip surgery.
and the hip surgery. It solidified the team. Although the first couple of years were very rocky, he was able to straighten the ship for himself. He proved himself to be one of the best goalies of all time, not only with the Vezinas, but now he's a 2-time Cup champion. I think the Bobbery is probably the best playoff save I've ever seen. But the fact is that he stood tall in the playoffs when the Panthers needed him to. He looked solid. The team rallied around him. And I think he was probably one of the catalysts as to why they're able to go on 3 Stanley Cup runs. If he didn't take over in Boston and win those games and then become an absolute wall for the rest of that, first run of the Cup, we may be singing a different tune. That might have been our only trip to the Cup. But I think that belief in unfinished business and what he was able to show reinvigorated what the Panthers saw and what they wanted to get out of him. And for me, I'll be forever grateful. But I don't think he's being traded. That's just my personal thing. But we'll see what happens. Business needs to be done, and we'll see if contract negotiations continue to be an issue, or if they're going to say, "Hey, let's send him off to a contender to see if he can go win another cup."
Yeah. If he is, thank you. If he's not, then let's hopefully see some great performances around him, and hopefully they protect him a lot better, and then that he's in the position to make the saves. And that first AJ Greer fight, by the way, was against Mark Kastelik in game 1 of 2024-25. So yeah, AJ Greer setting the tone right away. So we will see what happens, and we'll be here on the YouTube channel, just posting about possible transactions. And if the Panthers do actually make a move, we will go live at 3 p.m. here on the channel to discuss what the moves are, or if there's nothing, then we'll see you guys on Monday. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
It's been a great season with you so far, Armando. I know we got a few of these left, but you guys can follow me on X at Prudential0. One thing I do want to add is that Zito is a wizard. For right now, we're all focused on 2 guys maybe being traded away. Would not surprise me if he might pull something from left field completely that nobody's reporting on, that nobody knows what's going on. So who knows? It might be something for the rest of the season and into next. So Zito knows what he's doing. Let's trust the process.
Yeah, in Zito we trust. Thank you, Nick, and see you next week.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.